Okay, so this will be the final poem by Morgan that we're going to cover. On channel, this is going to be Good Friday. And okay. All right, so this is called Good Friday. And um, as you can tell by the title, okay, this poem basically has a couple themes in it, but one of the central themes in the poem is the idea of religion or the idea of like faith, spirituality, those kind of ideas, yeah, those kind of themes. So obviously, Good Friday is from again the Christian tradition, Christian religion, um, which is the idea that Good Friday, okay, is uh, related to uh, Christ again, and and let me just double check. It's either the day that Christians hold as when Christ rose from the dead, or it is, excuse me, it is the yeah, let me just double check, okay? Commemorating his crucifix. Yeah, yeah. So it's basically it's connected to the crucifixion, uh, and the death. And I believe the Sunday is the day that Christians believe that Christ rose from the dead after he was killed. Okay. In any case, it's related to the death and resurrection of Christ, from the Christian perspective, from the Christian perspective. So you can see, okay, it's deeply religious, okay, in its themes. Similar to some of the other poems we looked at, like Trio, and to some extent even in the snack bar. Okay, so it begins at 3 o'clock, the bus lurches. Okay, so 3 o'clock, uh, again, we start with the idea of three, which is connected to the Trinity, which is again a Christian kind of idea. The Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I'm not an expert on Christianity, obviously, but um, you see, it's a Christian idea. Three, the Trinity, and then Good Friday. It doesn't take a genius to work out. They're sort of connected. Okay, so again, we have a sort of hint or indication towards the religious theme or Christian theme. Okay, the bus lurches round into the sun. Okay, so the bus drives. Just double check what this means. The bus drives and make an abrupt, unsteady, uncontrolled movement. Yeah, so it's like that. Yeah, jerking basically. Round into the sun again. The sun is a wordplay. Again, it's a reference to Christ, who's also called the Son, Son. And in classic sort of you could say religion or classic spirituality, like pre-Christian, pre to some extent pre-Abrahamic religion. In other words, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. In the pre kind of faiths or traditions, uh, ideas, uh, the sun was often worshipped, okay, as a primary god. Excuse me. The sun itself was often worshipped as a primary god, and so was the idea of light. And it makes sense, okay, because, you know, if you're living in a time without electricity, then when the sun is up, that's when the day starts. And that's when you have the ability to be able to feed yourself, feed your family, and to live, essentially, to live, okay? And when the sun goes down, disappears, your day is over. You have no control of the sun, but the sun has a great deal of influence over you. Yeah. And also, the sun itself would be impactful on the crops, the harvest, which would relate to the overall larger society, community, whether how many people lived that year, you know, because of how many people got to eat versus how many people died, and so on. You understand the point? So the idea of light and uh, the sun itself, again, it's been worshipped for a long time, yeah. And I would say as well, you shouldn't get confused and start thinking that your ancestors were idiots or something, that they actually thought the sun was a god. It's possible that, you know, to some extent they believed that the sun had some power in it, or it had some divine kind of power, like it was godlike. But I would say you should give your ancestors much more credit in terms of what they're thinking. That maybe when they are celebrating or what you call worshipping the sun, it's another way of saying that they are making sure everyone recognizes that this thing is extremely important. We need to pay attention to it because if we don't, then we can all die. Yeah, that's the point. Remember, the only reason you're here and I'm here is because your ancestors were smart enough to survive. Yeah, lions and all that. Yeah. So in any case, it's a very old idea. Yeah, that's the point. It's very old. Yeah, this idea. In ancient Babylon, you had references to, you know, uh, or divine beings or whatever related to light fighting the darkness and all that. So it's ancient, okay, and then in Christianity, uh, depending on how you read it, depending on how you take it, in the Christian tradition, the two ideas were merged. I'll put it that way. Yeah. So the two ideas were merged. You have the Son embodied in the person of Jesus Christ, and he is also associated with the sun, as in the sun, like the physical sun, in many different ways, such as rising, after dying. In other words, after setting, excuse me, rising again, which is sort of like a reflection of the resurrection story. Yeah, that's the point. Okay, anyway, all that's captured in this here, round into the sun. Okay, does this go? He flops beside me, so this is quoting someone. Right along Bath Street. Okay, so what happens basically is the speaker is sitting on a bus. Okay, bus is a very sort of common man way of transportation. It's again connected to how Morgan spends his time, his poetry, focused on everyday type of situations, or maybe even more than everyday, looking at sort of like the poor or looking at the working class, the overlooked, and making poems about them. Okay, so making us focus on things that sometimes we might overlook or ignore. And the bus, yeah, represents that, yeah. So the bus, the way that they're traveling is, again, is what the everyday person takes, yeah, to work and all that stuff. Okay, so what happens is the speaker's on a bus, okay, and someone comes and sits down next to him, and he more like drops, he flops, yeah, so it means like he drops, yeah, down next to him, and he says, uh, does this go right along Bath Street? So he's asking a question, yeah. Okay, so this other person in the poem is gonna ask the speaker a bunch of questions. Okay, he's gonna talk, and what this other person represents, okay, is like a questioning voice. There's different ways that you can interpret this. One way you can interpret this is that he represents sort of a person that is like unsure about things, and he's trying to get to the answers. He's trying to get to the heart of things, the truth about things. That's kind of one interpretation. The other interpretation would be that this person is questioning things that people believe in sort of a critical or skeptical kind of way. In other words, he has ideas, but he's doing what's called the Socratic method, named after Socrates, who would teach essentially by asking questions. Okay. In any case, the point is that he has ideas in his head, he has beliefs about stuff, but what he's doing is he's sharing his opinions and ideas by questioning the sort of common things that people believe. In this case, it is questions about faith, Christianity, God, that kind of thing. Okay. Anyway, you're gonna say, "Oh, that's all right. See, I've got some Easter eggs for the kiddies," and you can see by the way the man talks. So the first thing to pick up is that he talks like the common man, the everyday man, uh, the uh, and again, the not conventionally educated man. And I don't say he's not educated outright because uh, going to school and all that, that's like one way of being educated, but there's other ways of being educated too. In any case, he talks, okay, like the everyday person talks. He doesn't talk in a very like proper, formal kind of way. He talks like a everyday, you could say like working class kind of person. Yeah, he talks like in like slang or Scots kind of stuff. Okay, so any case, he says, "See, I've got some Easter eggs." Okay, so he's bought Easter eggs for uh I don't know, his kids or his relatives or whatever. So he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. Okay, I've had a wee drink, so he's been drinking. You understand. You'll maybe think it's a funny day to be celebrating. Okay, again, because Friday is the death in Christian tradition. It's the death of Christ, so you think it's a funny day to, why would you celebrate that? Okay, that's what he's saying. So he's basically saying to the speaker, you might be asking me why am I celebrating today? So he knows, yeah, what it's about, yeah. He knows, yeah. That's what I'm saying. On first reading of this, you might think the guy's not very smart or something. But if you read it more closely, you can see that he knows what's happening. He's just skeptical, or he's like questioning basically what's happening. Or he knows what's happening, but he has questions about it. Yeah, he's not fully sure what's happening basically. Okay. Well, you know, I say, okay, I wasn't working and I like to celebrate when I'm not working. Okay. So he likes to celebrate when he has a day off, which is all right, fine, normal. Okay, I don't say it's right. I'm not saying it's right. You understand, you understand. Okay, again, the way he talks is very like not formal, it's informal, just common man type of talking, yeah. Okay, I don't say it's right. I'm not saying it's right. Okay, again, so he's sort of saying that he recognizes maybe it's not the right thing to be doing, and he kind of recognizes that maybe the speaker, as in the person he's talking to, that maybe the speaker will um might judge him about it, might judge him for it. Um, so he's recognizing that. Okay, but anyway, that's the way I look at it. So he's just saying this is how I see things. I'm not boring you. You see today, take today. Now, one thing you'll notice, okay, is that the speaker doesn't say anything in return yet. He doesn't say anything in return. The whole conversation is more like a monologue. In other words, it's more like the man is talking and the speaker is just sort of like listening. Yeah, that's like what's happening. Okay, system, I'm not boring you. In other words, he's checking with the speaker that like to make sure he's not getting bored or that he's interested in listening to him. Okay. You see today, take today. I don't know what today is in aid of, whether Christ was crucified or was he rose from the dead. So again, he either again, you can take it two ways, yeah. Either he was confused about exactly what the day is about, like me when I had to Google it to make sure. Or he's saying this again in a kind of skeptical way to sort of question the event, yeah, to kind of question the event and to ask, you know, how true is it basically like that, yeah. Okay. Anyway, you're an educated man, you can tell me. So again, if we take the approach that he's not sure, so he's asking the speaker for help or a clarification. Now it's kind of interesting that he asks the speaker and he says you're educated. Like how does he know that? We don't know. We don't know. Now you can tell me. Well, there you are. It's been seen time and again. So you can see, okay, that the person, the man is sort of humble. Okay, he's humble and he's willing to learn. Yeah, he's willing to learn and he's humble. Yeah. So again, it shows he's got good qualities. Okay, it's been seen time and again. Okay, the working man has nae education. He just canny. So it's been seen time and again. The working man, meaning like talking about himself, has nae education. Means he has no schooling, no real formal education like university and all that kind of stuff. He just can't, just hasn't got it. Know what I mean? So basically saying that he just can't and doesn't have sort of formal education. Again, talking about maybe he doesn't know the official answer to these things because he hasn't studied them, and he didn't get a chance to study properly because he was working. Yeah, he had to work. He had to spend his time working, so he didn't get the chance to or the privilege of like formal education. All right, but again, like I said, this I wouldn't call him uneducated because there's many different forms of education, and I'd say maybe the main form of education, regardless of if you like attend a university or not, is always going to be self-education. In other words, it's not really. In other words, it's good to go to university and all that, obviously, but it's not really the place you are that makes you educated or not. It's the actions you take to educate yourself with what's around you, with what you have access to. So a university is good because you have access to people who know a lot of things, yeah, like your teachers, your lecturers. They know a lot of things, yeah. And um, you have access to libraries inside the university. So basically, it's like a place where you can study a lot, yeah, if you choose to. Um, but that doesn't mean if you don't go to uni that you can't educate yourself. A large amount of my own education, a large amount of my own education came from uh, just reading books, yeah, pretty much. So, um, personally, I went to university quite late because I pretty much dropped out of school. I pretty much dropped out of school and I barely attended school when I was there, yeah. School wasn't really for me, yeah. So, a lot of my education came from self-education in terms of reading books. So, um, yeah, for example, on one of my phones, uh, I have around 700 books, something like that. And of those 700, I probably read 150, 200, something like that, yeah. Um, and these books are like the classics, yeah. So like the classics of literature, like Jules Verne, Alexander Dumas, um, uh, like for example, Dickens. So all like the Victorian sort of literature, Jekyll and Hyde, all that stuff. A lot of that stuff I read by myself, okay, and I engaged in self-education, yeah, learning about different the works of different philosophers and all that stuff. The point is, okay, there's not really any excuse to not be educated. It's really about yourself, yeah. It's about how educated would you like to be, and then taking advantage of the resources. And now with the internet, anyone can become educated pretty much. Okay, you can get free books on Gutenberg. There's a website called Gutenberg and pretty much has majority of the classic books on there. And if you don't like books, you can listen to audiobooks on YouTube for free. Um, so there's not really any excuse these days to not be educated. And now, especially with AI, okay, with ChatGPT, now you can really get educated. Yeah, just ask it a bunch of questions and you can learn. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so he's being humble. Yeah, he's being very humble, and he's saying that he doesn't have an education, and he calls himself ignorant. Yeah. Again, he's just being quite humble. Yeah, and he's sort of talking about how he didn't get a chance to study. Okay. Okay. Uh, so just bloody ignorant, ignorant, ignorant. Okay, this is just to emphasize the ignorant part. Okay. Anyway, well, and the bus brakes violently, so the bus stops. He lunges for the stair. Again, he's like slightly drunk, yeah, so he's like motioning. So the way he moves is kind of off balance a little bit. Swings down, off into the sun. Again, repeating what was mentioned at the beginning. Going into the sun for his Easter eggs. Again, Easter having religious connotations. Okay, Easter, again, Easter Sunday is connected to the idea that's when Christ is believed to have risen. Okay, risen. So the poem begins Good Friday with the idea of the sun setting, the idea of Christ being killed, the idea of the man being unsure about things, having questions. Poem ends with Easter, which is when Christians believe that Christ rose. I'll tell you something else. Easter is also in spring, okay, which is the end of winter, when the sun begins to come back, the light begins to come back. So the sun is beginning to rise, okay? And by the end of the poem, the man has expressed his questions and he's come to some kind of resolution. Yeah. Even though he didn't get any answers for his questions, he did to some extent come to some kind of like conclusion, okay, about his situation. And he gets off the bus. Yeah, he gets off the bus. So you can see it's a very nice kind of connection, yeah, between the beginning and the end of the poem. And on very nearly steady legs, one step at a time. Yeah, he gets off the bus one step at a time. This little technique, I've forgotten what it's called, but basically you can think about it as poem structuring. It's like a form of sentence structure, I guess, which is that the way that the poem looks reflects what's being talked about. So one word at a time is like one step at a time, which is like how he has to walk to get off the bus because he's like a bit. And what I mean is he needs to put a step, make sure it lands, on the floor properly so he doesn't fall over. Take another step, make sure he doesn't fall. Another one like that because he's slightly drunk. Yeah. So it's representing what's being talked about. Okay, anyway, so that's the poem. Okay, obviously key themes are like religion or Christianity. Um, yes, good. Um, yeah, just on the subject of education. All right. Uh, Again, remember if you want to study Nat 5 or higher for free, just click on the thing in the description. You can study for free. You can learn the whole course, both of them, for free. And again, there's no real excuse, okay, to not be educated. Education will change your life, yeah. It will change the point of why become educated? What's the point? Why do it? Is it for a job or whatever? No. Okay, the point of eh, being educated is fundamentally the more you know, okay, the more you know, the more your eyes open to reality, which means the more options you have for life. Okay, the richer your life can be. I don't just mean by money, although more knowledge does make you more money, but in terms of what your life can actually be like, yeah. If you don't really know too much, your life essentially will be what other people allow it to be, yeah, what other people give to you, essentially. If you don't know too much, then you have to depend on other people a lot. The more you know, the more independent you become. Which is why people are scared of AI because they think this thing can get to the point where it knows so much that it doesn't need us, which won't happen pretty much. But I don't want to get into that as a distraction side point. But the more you know, okay, the more independent you become and the more agency, autonomy, choices you have over your own destiny, essentially, your own life. Um, but one caveat, yeah, I'll give you one thing that I have to tell you too. Be very careful, okay, with what you decide to learn about. Be very careful. Just focus on learning about things which are uh, stay in the stuff which is in the light. Yeah. Okay. Remember in The Lion King when Mufasa says to Simba, everything the light touches, that's ours. Yeah. Stay in the light. Don't go in the dark place. So I'd very much recommend to you that you stay in the light. Okay. Don't go into the dark place because, like I said, the more you know, the more your eyes open to reality, which is good. But it means that the more your eyes open to reality and the dark things, okay, if you go into the dark places, the corners, yeah, and try and uncover stuff, um, the deep, deep, deep type questions, I would recommend you strongly, especially if you're young, okay, you're a teenager or early 20s. I recommend that you don't do that, okay, because certain doors, when you open them, you can't close them again yet. So I recommend, unless you want uh, nightmares every other night and PTSD and experiences that your teacher goes through, I recommend that you don't open those doors yet until you're old enough to handle what's behind them. Okay. Anyway, we'll stop there and yeah, good luck.